In the 13th century, Europe expected Russia to disappear. From the west, crusading armies marched, certain they had the divine right to conquer and convert. Most rulers failed when facing just one of these forces. Alexander Nevsky faced both, and he survived. From the east, the Mongol Empire swept across Asia, a force that seemed unstoppable, brutal, and systematic. Alexander Nevsky lived in one of the most dangerous periods in medieval European history. The Russian lands weren't a single, unified state. They were a patchwork of rival principalities, often fighting each other with no central army or coordinated defense. At the same time, two powerful forces were closing in. To the east, the unstoppable Mongol war machine. To the west, Catholic military orders, backed by the major powers of Europe. For Nevsky, the challenge wasn't how to expand his territory. It was simply how to keep it alive. By the time Alexander came to power, the Mongols had already laid waste to huge parts of Eastern Europe. Their style of warfare was terrifyingly effective, fast, highly organized, and completely uncompromising. Cities that resisted were razed to the ground. Their populations were either killed or enslaved. Nevsky understood a hard truth that many other rulers refused to accept. A direct military fight with the Mongols was suicide. It meant total destruction. So, he chose a different path, a controversial one. He acknowledged Mongol authority. He traveled to the Great Khan, paid tribute, and negotiated. This decision wasn't popular, but its result was undeniable. The city of Novgorod and the lands around it were spared the devastation that had consumed so many others, while neighboring principalities vanished from the map. Nevsky's calculated submission preserved his people, his economy, and his political structures. He bought survival at the price of pride. The threat from the west was entirely different. The Teutonic and Livonian orders weren't just after land or money. They were on a mission of religious and political domination. Their campaigns were designed to completely replace local rule, reshape society from the ground up, and impose permanent control. Unlike the Mongols, who were content with tribute, compromise with the Western Knights was not an option. If Nevsky lost to them, his land, his culture, and his faith would be erased and transformed beyond recognition. This was a line he could not, and would not, allow to be crossed. By the year 1242, the Western forces were pushing deeper and deeper into the northeastern Russian territories. This wasn't just a random border raid. It was a calculated, strategic expansion of their power. Alexander Nevsky gathered his forces, knowing one thing with absolute clarity. If he met the knights in a conventional battle on open ground, it will odlosa. His army didn't have the heavy cavalry, the plate armor, or the training to match the elite crusading orders. Instead, his strength lay in lighter infantry, skilled archers, and local militias who knew the land. Victory wouldn't come from brute force. It would depend entirely on terrain and timing. The final confrontation took place on the frozen surface of Lake Papoose. The choice of this battlefield was a stroke of genius. A frozen lake is a terrible place for a cavalry charge. The ice reduces mobility, neutralizes the advantage of heavy horses, and punishes rigid, disciplined formations. The Teutonic Knights, confident in their proven tactics, charged forward in their classic wedge formation, aiming to smash right through the center of the Russian line. And at first, it worked. The Russian center buckled and was pushed back. The formation seemed to be on the verge of collapse. But this was the trap. As the knights pressed their advantage, their wedge formation became stretched out and disorganized. Their heavy armor became a liability. Their horses struggled for footing on the slick ice, and controlling the momentum of the charge became nearly impossible. At that exact moment, Nevsky's forces attacked from the flanks. This wasn't a glorious, dramatic charge. It was controlled, sustained pressure from all sides. The goal wasn't to annihilate the knights in a single clash, but to sow chaos and break their cohesion. Now, popular history and epic films love to focus on the idea of the ice cracking and swallowing the knights whole. The reality was probably more practical and just as deadly. Heavily armored knights who were knocked over struggled to get back on their feet. Fallen riders couldn't rise quickly in their cumbersome armor. The horses slipped, collided, and panicked. The knights' greatest strength, their disciplined formation, completely disintegrated. Whether the ice broke under their weight or not, the terrain had turned against them. The battle devolved from an organized assault into a desperate retreat under constant pressure. The Teutonic forces broke and fled. Their eastward expansion was stopped dead in its tracks. The consequences of this battle were profound, but not in the way we usually think about famous victories. It didn't create an empire for Nevsky. It didn't bring him mountains of gold or vast new territories. What it did was establish a boundary. After the battle on the ice, the Western military orders largely abandoned any serious attempts to expand into northeastern Russian lands. Nevsky had bought his people time, and in the brutal calculus of the 13th century, time was the same as survival. For the rest of his life, Alexander Nevsky walked a tightrope between two worlds. Toward the Mongols, he maintained his policy of diplomacy and submission, continuing to pay tribute to keep the peace. Toward the West, he showed unyielding resistance, making it clear that there was a line that could not be crossed. This wasn't the stuff of heroic legends. It was cold, hard realism. He chose to bend the knee to the enemy that demanded tribute, in order to fight the enemy that threatened his people's very identity. That choice preserved his culture, his orthodox faith, and the political continuity of his land. Alexander Nevsky is often misunderstood. He wasn't a great conqueror like Alexander the Great or a revolutionary who built a new world. He was a survivor, a pragmatic ruler who understood power, geography, and the painful limits of his own strength. In an age defined by colossal empires and holy wars, he chose endurance over glory. He chose the difficult, unglamorous path of preservation, and because of that choice, his land survived when so many others did not. Thank you for watching. If you found this look into a pivotal moment of history interesting, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more stories about the figures who shaped our world. See you next time.